It survived 2 world wars, it survived the Great Depression, it survived 158 years of everything the world could throw at it. And then in 2023, it was gone. Not because of a fire, or a recession, or a rival who beat them at their own game. It was undone by a single password. This is the story of how one weak login erased a company older than the telephone and put around 700 people out of work. To feel the size of this loss, you first have to feel the size of what was lost. The company traded under a name that had been on British roads since 1865, Knights of Old, a haulage firm from the heart of England. For 5 generations, it did one unglamorous thing extremely well. It moved other people's goods from one place to another, on time, every day. No drama, just trucks and trust. It was part of the quiet logistics layer most people only notice when it fails. The kind of company you don't think about until it suddenly isn't there. By the 2020s, that small haulier had grown into the KNP Logistics group. Hundreds of lorries, a sprawling national network, and around 700 employees whose mortgages and families depended on it. It was, by every ordinary measure, a survivor, established, operational. The kind of business that simply feels permanent, the kind nobody imagines reading about in a cybercrime story. That feeling was about to be tested to destruction. Sometime in 2023, an attacker went looking for a way in. They did not break down a door, they did not bribe an insider or plant a clever piece of spy equipment. They found something far more ordinary and far more dangerous. One employee's password. It was weak enough that by all accounts it could simply be guessed, and behind it there was no second lock, no 2-step check to stop a stranger who already held the key. The group behind it called themselves Akira, a ransomware crew that had surfaced that very year. Understand what that word really means. Ransomware isn't vandalism, it's a business model. Their product is simple. They make victims pay for access to their own files. Once inside, the attack reached the company's core systems, and then all at once, everything locked. Critical files and the systems used to dispatch vehicles and bill customers sealed behind a wall the company could no longer open. Here is where a bad day becomes a fatal one. A modern company can sometimes survive an attack like this, but only if it has clean backups, stored somewhere the attacker cannot touch. KNP's backups and recovery systems were reportedly caught in the same attack. The safety net, the one thing that was supposed to make recovery possible, was gone along with everything else. Then came the demand. The criminals wanted to be paid to hand the company back its own files, a sum that has been reported to be around £5 million. It was money the company simply did not have lying around. And so the choice everyone imagines they'd face, pay the criminals or refuse on principle, was never really a choice at all. There was no realistic way to pay and no clean way back. Within days, more than 500 lorries sat motionless. A business whose entire purpose was to keep moving had stopped completely, and a haulage firm that cannot move freight has nothing left to sell. Think about what that means downstream. Drivers with nothing to drive, customers waiting for goods the company could no longer move. Every day of silence burned cash the company no longer had, while the bills kept arriving on time. By late 2023, the 158-year-old firm went into administration. Around 700 people lost their jobs, not because of anything they did, but because of one password most of them never even knew existed. Jobs, careers, and a name 5 generations had built, written off in a single insolvency filing. A century and a half of work ended in the same year as the attack. And if you're wondering why criminals would bother with an old haulage company instead of some glittering tech giant, that's exactly the point. Firms like this are the perfect target. They have real money. They often have older, lighter security than a bank or a tech firm, and they cannot afford a single day of downtime, which can make the pressure to pay intense. To a ransomware business, that combination is a soft target with a full wallet. For every headline breach at a household name, there are countless ordinary companies hit the same way. The bakery, the law office, the parts supplier. Most never make the news. They quietly pay or quietly fold, and the world never hears about it. KNP became the rare exception because the ending was so total and so public that it was impossible to look away. It turned a private catastrophe into a warning the whole industry could finally see. The hardest part of this story is how preventable it looks in hindsight. The attackers didn't deploy some unstoppable superweapon. They walked through a door that was simply missing its second lock. Two-step verification, the same nagging code your bank already makes you type, turns a stolen password into a useless one. On its own, that one setting might have stopped the very first step of this chain. And backups only save you if the attacker can't reach them. Kept separate, offline, and actually tested, they are the line between a terrible week and the end of the company. KNP reportedly even had cyber insurance and standard IT protections in place. It still wasn't enough. Insurance can pay for some of the wreckage, but it cannot undelete a backup, and it cannot give 700 people their jobs back. So here is the entry in the ledger. On one side, a single weak password and a missing second step that is far cheaper than a shutdown. On the other side, a 158-year-old company, more than 500 trucks, and 700 livelihoods. Knights of old survived 2 world wars. What it could not survive was the quiet gap between we have security and we have actually tested that our security works. That gap is where most companies live right now, including, quite possibly, the one you work for. Every hack has a price tag. This one was paid by people who never clicked a thing. If this was worth your time, the channel is the breach ledger. We read the receipts so your company never has to pay one. Turn on the second lock. Test that your backups really come back. And I'll see you in the next case.